Bernie, so how is the procurement function typically measured then?
So typically, is there a procurement strategy? Do we have a forward-looking plan? So a strategy that might look out 3 or 4 years, and then the more detailed plan underneath that. What are we doing for the next 12 months? What's our pipeline? Well, what's our book of work that's coming? Then there's some metrics about the spend, the percentage of spend that's under contract. Are we operating in the Wild West with no contracts and potentially not even purchase orders? Invoices are just turning up. Or are we managing our spend and we've got it under contract? That's a really key one.
So you're making sure that the organisation's budget is under control and it doesn't have a lot of invoices coming in which you hadn't gone through a procurement process for.
That's right. And then the other key metric is really process cycle time. So when a customer comes to us to work through an activity, how long does it take us to help them get to contract execution? Are we making that process efficient as possible?
That's really like any organisation there or function within a business. You've got your strategy, you've got your measurements, you're working towards some sort of budget. And to me, that suggests you need professional skills to do that. It's not something you just throw people into that part of the business. They need some kind of professional background. What sort of skill sets do you typically look for?
So skill set and attitude-wise, really being a good all-round. And it's one of those skills where actually having a few grey hairs can be an advantage, having fought a few battles. Someone that knows the business, they don't need to know it intimately, but well enough so that they know how to get things done and how the bits of the organisation fit together. Someone that's got a bit of a working knowledge of how to write requirements without being a BA, knowing how the fundamentals of accounting without being an accountant, a little bit of contract law without being a lawyer. So a fairly broad skill set. And also someone that, when they need to, isn't afraid of having tough conversations, both with supplier and internal stakeholders.
Especially the internal stakeholders sometimes. I sense on the outside that the relationship inside is often harder than the relationship with outside parties.
That's right. And when I was starting my first procurement job, my first manager told me you'll spend more time negotiating with internal stakeholders than you will with suppliers. And I thought he was joking, but he absolutely wasn't.
Well, it's the same on the vendor side. It's often a lot of internal negotiations. As the deals get bigger, there's a lot of boundaries that are getting crossed and different stakeholders are involved. And so there's an awful lot of negotiation. So it's the same on the customer side. This is the other one I was thinking about. Do people need to be certified in any particular skill sets then?
So there are a couple of professional bodies. So in Australia, CIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, out of the UK is the one that's best known. And for a lot of the jobs, membership of that's well regarded. It's not mandatory. I think it's a good thing. It broadens people's skill sets.
And do they have a certification to get in there?
They don't. The process that they put people through, different pathways. And I suppose within an organisation, procurement people will typically get an extra layer of probity training, conflicts of interest training, fraud detection training.
And is that internal or you get external bodies to come in and do the training?
It can be a mix. For big mature shops, it's internal, but often they get one of the consultants in to run training once or twice a year.
Now, how much does negotiation play a role in procurement?
So when people think of formal sit-down negotiations, let's say for positional bargaining like buying a used car, probably less than people think. Unfortunately, perhaps, by the time people have got through the rest of the process and the admin and work with their stakeholders on what their requirements are, often there's not much time left for genuine meeting negotiation on improving the deal, unfortunately.
So more of a haggle then around some of the key points.
That's right. Well, the danger is that it can almost become more of a compliance exercise. That's probably something to look for. Is a procurement set up so that there are opportunities for those genuine negotiation pieces?
So to make it go smoothly then, you really want to make sure you're in sync with the procurement process and making sure you've sat down with someone in procurement to understand what is the process that we should be working through.
That's right, Martin. And often the challenge for a supplier can be that once a procurement process is underway, then to maintain fairness, the comms going to one supplier needs to be the same. So often if you're an incumbent supplier or even a new one trying to break into an organisation, Often those conversations about how does procurement work and how can we engage best are best done before an actual live procurement is afoot.
With the big enterprises, it's often good to have that relationship with procurement even before there's anything on the table, just so you understand how things should work when something does kick off.
It is, I think so. And also part of the value that suppliers can get is an awareness of where the opportunities are. With the big suppliers, I try to encourage them to go fishing where the fish are. If they're about to spend a lot of time and effort, we're seeing an opportunity that's got no chance of coming to fruition, it's worth signalling to the suppliers.
That's an interesting point, Bernie, because often as a vendor selling software, you've got your kit you want to get in there, but it doesn't make sense in bringing the fishing line along if there's no fish there, right?
That's right.
So you in procurement would know where the fish are and go and target these areas.
We'd know a bit of it. The other people in the organisation would be the actual functional line managers, various functions, and also the architecture folk. Unfortunately for suppliers, it's usually more than one conversation.
What does a customer look for from a supplier during a negotiation?
The things that I look for are probably similar to what a customer's looking for. Are they organised? Are they applying the right amount of effort, not too much, too little, that reflects the size of the deal? Have they got a bid manager, lead on the deal, that knows how to galvanise activity within the organisation, both to clear out roadblocks during the process and during the negotiation? When a company shows that they can do that, that really gives the customer confidence. Can also do that through the life of the deal. After the contract's signed, if there's a problem in delivery, the organisation knows how to work together to clear out problems.
That's a really good point, because it demonstrates that you can manage what you've sold into the organisation, whether it's through services or software, and that's reflected in how you approach the procurement process itself. And so demonstrating that you're well organised, you can manage internal issues yourself without causing trouble back to the customer. That's a really good insight. How should a procurement process ideally run then? What's the kind of steps that you'd look for?
So to get from initiation to, which is someone's got an idea that they want to spend some money, to get to contract signing, we'll talk about that first. There are really three key phases that all the methods have got. So a planning stage, which is basically, do we know what we want to buy? Has someone got some money to pay for it? Are there any major risks or considerations, and who are the stakeholders at an early level? How are we going to approach the market? Are we going to talk to an incumbent supplier, a direct negotiation, or are we going to have a competitive process with multiple respondents? And it's really a permission stage. Have we got permission now to approach the market without wasting their time to go and solve this problem? So planning is about getting permission. Then we go and execute what we said in our planning document. First of all, we decide how we're going to evaluate the bids. It gets voting rights on the evaluation. Then we actually run the process. We get the bids in and we evaluate them and we write a report. This is the process that we ran. Hopefully it says we ran the process that we talked about in phase one. Here are the strengths and weaknesses. Here's how they scored against set criteria that we agreed upfront, so we're not making this up as we go along. Then we go to the final award stage, which is once we've got the contract pretty much cleared out with legal, it's just about ready to execute. And then that's going back to the formal stakeholder with financial delegation. We've been through all those steps. The people who we've engaged on the evaluation and the other stakeholders, everyone's had their input. Have we got permission now to go and execute the contract? So phase three is award, and that's really the key step. And then it's actually immediately after that actually execution will happen, which is often more of an admin function. Often someone in procurement can do that. Someone like me, how to put contracts together and where signatures should go, rather than asking some senior executives to do that. And then the very last step after that is POs actually get raised. So it's worth suppliers knowing that, because if they need a PO to actually book the deal, their revenue recognition, it's worth having that conversation up front, just so that both organisations know what constraints they've got internally.
The fact that you might have signed the contract, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the PO. And I know that some vendors do need the PO in order to book the revenue. That's an important step.
That's right. And in many organisations, the procurement organisation will say, we'll get you to contract execution and then throw the contract over the fence like a dead cat. And then it's up to the business to raise the PO. And if that's coming up to an end of quarter or an important milestone for the supplier, there are plenty of times when that just causes harm.
Is there some key people that have input into the final decision as to which supplier you're going to go with?
There will be. So typically on a evaluation team, you want coverage, but not too many. So typically you want between 4 and maybe 6 people on an eval team, and the procurement rep is there as a facilitator and to keep us moving. So I'm in there helping the team through it. I don't get a vote. The typical people that you'd have on a evaluation team would be the 2 or 3 key functional owners, the people that are actually going to be responsible for the selection and production. You'd have risk involved. They might not be on the eval team, but they're an absolutely key input. Again, legal are a really important input, but they probably wouldn't actually be on the eval team. You'd have finance, particularly if it's a long deal and you've done discounted cash flow calculations and any of that kind of stuff. Finance need to sign that off, and also to be the people to confirm that the customer's actually got budget. So there are a number of ancillary stakeholders that a supplier should be. It's a positive sign if they're getting signals that those sorts of stakeholders are engaged.
What usually causes procurement process to go wrong or take too long? And I think we've highlighted some of those pieces already, but there's some sort of key things that you see.
A key mistake that can derail it right from the start is when someone in the business comes with a deal that's effectively already been done. So they've gone off, rightly or wrongly, and they've picked the winner. They're well down the track with contract negotiation, or they might have actually completed that. And he's really asking procurement just for help getting the contract executed, because they know that that's a step that they can't do themselves. And the real problem with that is that they've probably burnt the available time on their project timeline. So if I break the news to them that now they've made a misstep and we now need to run a 2 or 3 month process, that can be a hard conversation. But the other real problem for the supplier involved is that procurement's all about treating people equally to ensure fairness. So if they've gone right down the road with one supplier, it's hard to not form a conclusion that that supplier's got a pretty major advantage now if we now run an activity where we seek multiple bids. So that can be a real danger.
I've been on the other side where I've seen that happen. And the whole thing loops back to procurement and another 2-3 month process, which is understandable. Some of the account execs got a little enthusiastic and cornered somebody. So it's on the vendor to make sure that the process, it's okay and it's been followed. Otherwise it can hold everybody up. So once a contract is signed, what role does procurement play over the life of the contract then?